Near mint condition, the home of collected editions. I can't believe they're giving us manga in this format. It's insane. And it's still ongoing. Masterpiece is a word that gets thrown around quite often, but there is no other word to describe this particular manga series. Today on Near Mint Condition, I, the Uncanny Omar, am going to give you my overview of the Lone Wolf and Cub Deluxe Edition hardcover from Dark Horse Comics. So please join me. Before going any further, a big thank you to the folks at Dark Horse Comics for sending us an advance copy of this deluxe edition. This book is due out in the direct market and book market on December 9th or 10th, depending on where you get your books. This was the #1 most requested manga to be released in deluxe edition. Ever since I had the honor of doing the video on Berserk Deluxe Edition Volume 1, this is the one that I would see in the comments. When are we going to get Lone Wolf and Cub? When are we going to get Lone Wolf and Cub? And some of those comments were from people that have never read Lone Wolf and Cub, nor had even read manga. They just know that this is a legendary manga series. And here it finally is. So we're going to do a comparison here in a little bit, but there we have Kazuo Koike and Goseki Kojima, Lone Wolf and Cub Deluxe Edition. And over here, in this kind of like a glossy finish, we have our main protagonist here. And that is Ogami Ito and Daigoro, Lone Wolf and Cub. And this does have like a leather feel to it. Definitely a different texture than the other manga. That does come off, by the way, the sticker. And this does come sealed in plastic. And inside the plastic, you get the leaflet that some nuts, dozens of us, keep and collect. There's a quote here from Frank Miller, and it's a Harvey Award winner, and the Dark Horse manga logo. This will also tell you the retail price of $54.99, but that can also be found on the sticker back here, the ISBN sticker. So let's look at the spine really quick. Kazuo Koike, Goseki Kojima, Lone Wolf and Cub. There's the kanji right there, the Volume 1, and the Dark Horse logo. And of course, compared to the ever-growing spines of deluxe editions from Dark Horse Comics. It is insane how much we've gotten, and crazy how much more we could get in this format. But here's a quick look as to how it will compare to the rest of the Dark Horse books on your shelf. But we are here to talk about this series today, and it has been released previously in small tankobon size. And when I did my short, I think I put it on TikTok and Instagram, but these have only been translated. This entire series has only been translated from left to right format, so the mirror format, and I'll do a comparison. This book right here will contain these two volumes, volumes 1 and 2, and part of 3, meaning that there will probably be 12 volumes of Lone Wolf and Cub Deluxe editions. And again, I'll do a comparison when we look inside of the book. So that's what I'm going to do next. We're going to open this up and talk about the stories found in here, do a comparison, and of course, look at the build of the book and all the extras in the back. Okay, I wanted to really quick again just point out how amazing this texture is. So it has this grain-like texture. It does have the burnishing and then this foil stamp right here. Now that we can take a closer look at the book, let's go ahead and open it up. And you have your title page right there. And here are the credits. So you have Kazuo Koike, of course, is the story writer, and then your artist is Goseki Kojima. Dana Lewis doing the translation with Susie Lee and Studio Cutie doing the lettering and the retouch. And I think that's no different than these editions here. Also no different than these editions is this right here, but they let you know at the very beginning that this is a translation unlike a lot of manga when it's translated, because they're trying to preserve the Edo period Japanese that they're using here. And a lot of the words cannot be translated into English because sometimes there's a double meaning. So they do their best when it comes to the translation. And one of the most important things to you when you're reading this, it is a true blessing, is this right here. And that is the glossary that starts on page 708. By the way, this is a big book. This has 720 pages. The glossary will become your best friend as you're reading the story. And then you get to a word, you just go back here to look up. Exactly. And we're going to look at all the extras too here in a second. Or in a little bit. Not a second. Not sure how long I'm going to go. But you'll go back here. And it is a true blessing because this is such a historical piece. You have the table of contents, breaking it down by the different chapters, 16 chapters in this one, glossary, cover gallery, and then creator biographies. And you started off with Sun for Hire, Sword for Hire. This is one of the most important, if not the most important manga to have ever been translated into English. And I'm going to give you just a brief history of the stories here and the creators. Because it has come to America in the past. It was First Comics that first released it in the 90s. Originally, it was released in Japan from 1970 to 1976. And eventually what they did was collect them in these smaller size tankobon, but again, right to left format instead of this left to right format. And this was such a magnificent triumph that it became 6 movies, there was a TV show, and inspired so many generations. Whether you're a fan of manga or comics even, you have seen the influence of Lone Wolf and Cub. You have seen things in movies and TV shows. There is such a thing as the Lone Wolf and Cub trope, like Leon the Professional, or even Old Man Logan. Anytime you see an adult take care of a child, whether it's his own or not, the Road and The Last of Us, video games, Witcher, and Stranger Things, it's that trope of an adult taking care of a child. And it really started here, although some people, and I understand completely, I'm a huge fan of course, Osamu Tezuka and what he did with Dororo. But I think this is really when it became that, oh, this is actually a thing that we can use. There's musicians that have been inspired by Lone Wolf and Cub, directors, comic book creators, Frank Miller, who did a lot of the covers at the beginning for the Dark Horse releases, have their career built on inspirations for this. From that, it just started with this. So the creators, let's talk a little bit about them. We have Kazuo Koike, who, of course, is the series writer. Now, he has done other things that has been translated into English here in America. Lady Blood Snow, or Snowblood, not Blood Snow. Lady Snowblood. Dark Horse did that one, as well as Samurai Executioner, who he also worked on Goseki Kojima with. That one's also been translated into English, but one of my all-time favorite ones is the Crying Freeman. I love Crying Freeman, and that has been translated in English by Viz, and it's been translated by Dark Horse Comics eventually. He also did things like Wounded Man and Mad Bull 34. Some of these things that you may have seen an anime of and not really have gotten the chance to read the manga because unfortunately a lot of the manga has been just out of print for years. But he actually did some X-Men stuff for X-Men Unlimited number 50, I think it was it. And that, of course, has been translated into English. And then, of course, the wonderful art right here by the series artist Goseki Kojima. It is truly a masterpiece. Like, just looking at this, it looks so cinematic, and we'll talk more about the art here in a little bit. Now, his other work that has been translated into English has been done by Dark Horse Comics, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, is the Samurai Executioner. That actually has ties to this book, but I can't say anything about it because I don't want to spoil it, and it doesn't happen in this volume. It happens in another volume. I think that is the only one that's been translated. Maybe The Path to Assassin. I can't remember if that one's been translated into English or not. But Samurai Executioner has been translated. And that's it. That's really the only two that I can think of at the top of my head. Okay. Started in 1970, went all the way to 1976, inspired movies, inspired TV shows, anime, and of course inspiration for a whole generation of people. So what is it about this manga that stands out? What is it about this book? What's the premise? The premise is pretty simple, actually. It's all about this character named Ito, who, as we are told in the very first chapter, his son and his sword are for hire. So he's an assassin for hire. But there's actually a backup story to that. Why is he an assassin living in this time in Japan? This is all set during the 1700s, had to skip some pages there because we do have some adult content through here. And that's basically, by the way, just the violence and some of the sexual content. And honestly, some of the language through here that has been translated, of course, into English. This is all set during the Tokugawa shogunate period, so around the 1700s. And as we find out through here, and it doesn't really explain why until, I believe, chapter 8, why these two are out there. Ito was the shogun's executioner. So the shogun during this time had to oversee the different domains and their lords. And his system was kind of built on 3 different aspects of it that helped him take his role as the shogun. So you had the assassins who would do, of course, his deed and go out there and kill people in his name, kill anybody that was a rival to him, because there was other shoguns that were trying to take over. And then you had the spies, who were a big part of his system, that would go out there and let him know who was talking ill of him and who was trying to take over his kingdom and why exactly. And then you had the executioner. And that's what Ito was. He was the one that was in charge of making sure that anybody that spoke ill or had orders to commit seppuku, which you'll learn about through here, did it. And then, of course, would carry on the beheadings, and he would assist people in their deaths. And it was an honor by usually decapitating them. So that was the job that he had. It's not until chapter 8 that you learn exactly why he's a Ronin now, instead of working for the shogun, instead of working and having that big job. So what ends up happening is you find out, and I'm not going to go into details as to how, because it's not really explained through here. You just see him going from journey to journey and getting hired for different jobs. Sometimes the job requires him to kill somebody, but always following the law of Bushido. So even though he was the shogun's executioner, he has chosen to live the path of an assassin. And you'll see a lot of words thrown in here about the path to hell, and that is actually explained in the back in the glossary what that is. But even though he has chosen to live this path of an assassin with his son, he still follows certain rules and guidelines. Like, he has to have a reason, he has to be paid up front, and there are certain things that he won't do. Now, there are things he does that makes him not really a likable character. But that's the beauty of this book, because you start falling in love with his son, Daigoro. And through him, you see the innocence and you see the madness of the reality of this world that he lives in because of his father and the choices that were made for him. Although he made the choice of choosing the sword. And we'll get to that here in a second. For example, this is a village that hired him to go after these 5. No, actually, there's 8 sisters. So he does kill women. Yeah, like you've seen stories like Leon the Professional, right? No women, no children. He has different guidelines that he follows back then. And there's a certain honor to him, too, as he's traveling here. He speaks in poetry. He speaks in Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And there's a certain beauty to the way that he talks. So he's a well-educated man that unfortunately had something horrible happen to him in his life, and he's doing the best that he can with it. This is one of my favorite stories right here. This is a story where him and Daigoro end up going to this village, and in here, in this chapter, I think this is actually chapter 8, so maybe it's not until chapter 9, the one that's called The Assassin's Road, that you learn more about him. But here, Ito and Daigoro are heading to a hot spring, and this hot spring is being ruled by a mob of outlaws who have taken over this entire village and have taken everybody hostage. Ito does this very noble thing to save one of the prostitutes through here. So yes, you are going to see things in here like rape, like you're going to see things in here like the killing of animals and torturing children. But I mean, we have to show the brutality of this world that he comes in for people to understand what Daigoro's life is like for a 3-year-old. He's just 3 during this time. And he does talk from time to time. But the thing that he does here shows you what kind of man he is. And then ends up dealing with the outlaws in the way that he can only do. Which is just amazing. And you'll see, I'll show off some of the artwork here in a little bit. But what I wanted to focus on is the next chapter. And that is the Assassin's Road. The Assassin's Road is probably the most important chapter out of this entire book, and it's because it shows you the story of how he got there. Not 100%. That will come later on. Like, you'll get parts of his backstory. But this is just him and Daigoro as they're strolling around in his baby cart, and they're seeing these two girls play with a ball. The ball immediately gives them both a flashback of a choice that has to be made. This is the type of life that Ito lived. He puts a sword down and a ball down. And he lets his son choose. So you find out through here why he's letting his son choose. You find out that his wife had been killed. And he's letting his son choose whether he joins his mother in death, and that would mean Ito kill him, or whether he chooses this road to hell. The road of an assassin. So the boy's giving a choice, and he's thinking about it. Now, of course, this is a flashback, so he's a little younger. And through here, you get to see what happened. So he was once a big warrior and the shogun's executioner. But because of the world that he lives in, there was some betrayal, and it's kind of hinted at what happened, and he was being accused of working for another lord. And there was some evidence that was laid up upon him, so the shogun decided to best send out a group of warriors to carry out his executioner's execution. And he refuses. He does it all through honor, and he does it fair, and it's just amazing what ends up happening. And of course, Daigoro chooses the sword. But that's where it all starts. It starts with this ball that has these two characters going through a flashback, and the choice that Daigoro made when, I'm sure you saw it here, when he chooses the sword. First he goes for the ball, but choosing the sword paid his way for the on Assassin's Road. It's one of the best stories in here, and it really summarizes the brutality of this world, and even children are not safe. So through here, you're going to see Ito do different things. You get to see him go into this particular prison, like purposely get arrested because he was hired to go and kill a arsonist. And the arsonist is in this prison. And the things he does to survive, again, he is here without his weapon. And his weapon is one of the most amazing, badass weapons. Like, I always think of Benji and his weapons in the Blade of the Immortal, but the type of weapon that Ito uses is this Dotanuki style of sword. And it's got all kinds of tricks, along with the actual carriage, like that you'll see him use weapons out of that carriage. But when he's stuck alone, he is even more of a badass when he doesn't even have a weapon. And of course, you'll get the backup stories as to why he has to do certain things, why people hire him to go out there and kill people. And everybody has, of course, a reason. You'll see him leave Daigoro by himself to go and seek out a target that needs to be neutralized. He's not the greatest father, but he's a badass dad. The Tragic of Ozu, which we'll come back to this. I could talk about each and every one of these. I love these stories. This is about a young girl that makes friends with Daigoro. This is actually a Daigoro standalone story. Oh man, this is so good. His dad is sick and resting in this little temple. And this young girl has been hired to become an Osu, and you'll learn through here that an Osu is kind of like the bottom of the handmaidens. And the father recognizes that the son has these eyes that look like assassin eyes. So he just kind of kidnaps him and puts him in a shelter without food in the hopes that his father, who's a real executioner, will come and save him. But a lot of things happen the way that you don't expect them to happen. It is an amazing story. One of my favorite ones through here. I think a lot of people have their own favorite stories in volume 1 when it was released in the omnibus edition. This is the story of Ito. Can he truly kill a Buddha? So where does he stop? Where can he cross that path of killing a man of religious belief and strong religious beliefs? There's an amazing story that happens, I believe it's in chapter 16. There's a whodunit type of story here. And could it be Ito and Daigoro? Just beautiful scenery, which we'll come back to in a little bit. But in chapter, I want to say 16, it's the final chapter that's in here. He meets a man that is just as skilled as he is. These are the 3 brothers. And this man has decided to go a different path. Yes, right here. This man has decided to go a different path than Ito and Daigoro. He's kind of become a showman. Like, he just does a sideshow attraction that gets people out there to pay him money to try to chop his head off or hurt his head. And he runs into Ito and Daigoro. And this is one of those stories that lets you know what kind of man Ito is. As a reader, you're reading through here and you see all the bad things that he does, and he's not really being called out because he is the lead character. Of course, you start following... You start really recognizing Daigoro as the lead character. But Ito's still the main guy. The guy that, like, no matter what, he gets out of every situation. But at the end of the day, he's doing some bad things. This is the story that calls him out at first. That he doesn't have to live that path. Ogami Ito has a choice. So this guy that he runs into is also a skilled samurai and wishes him to stop. And they get into a fight. And that's all I will say about that story. They get into this huge fight. And in the back, let's talk about that. I talked about the most important part of this is the glossary. You'll keep going back and forth through here. You have the honorifics, in case you're not familiar with some of these, like dono and san and chan. But over here, in alphabetical order, from right to left. For example, this is a word that you will just get used to, and that is mefumado, because that's what he says throughout the book. It's the Buddhist hell, the way of demons and damnation. It's a word that you'll see through here, used left and right. There's another word called ronin, which the translation is here. Shinobi gets thrown in there. And they even have the Sun Tzu right there, The Art of War, and an explanation as to what these are. And then, of course, the art by Goseki Kojima, and then the covers here, which were supplied by, of course, Frank Miller. So yes, the series was available in English at first from First Comics. That was, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, and they didn't make it very far, unfortunately. And then Dark Horse ended up with the rights in the early aughts. So Frank Miller, being a huge fan, decided to do the covers. This is the biography on Goseki and Kazuo. And then the back. No real ads or anything. Not yet, of course, because Volume 2 doesn't come out, I believe, until March. And let's go back here. So yes, first comics. Yeah. Unfortunately, they went under. Only went up to like issue 50 or something. But that was the first time I ever saw them. Like in the late 80s. I remember seeing them at comic book stores. And they were done in the the left to right format. They were in standard size comic books, size books, and released every month. And I do remember covers by Frank Miller, and then eventually, I think it was like Bill Sienkiewicz and Mike Plug that went to do some covers. And unfortunately, the publisher, I think they went under in 1991 or 1992. And it wasn't until the early aughts, I think really in 2000, when Dark Horse began releasing the tankobons. And we'll do a comparison here in a little bit. I wanted to come back to a particular chapter. It's the Buddhist chapter, because to me, this is some of the very best cinematic, visually stunning sequential art pieces I've ever seen in comics. And done without dialogue. It just shows you the strength of Goseki Kojima. This is the story where he gets hired to go and kill a priest, and it's can you really kill a Buddha story. So he's meditating in a shrine, then he ends up cutting these statues. The actual confrontation between him and the priest, it's just a piece of pure mastery. It is somebody that is so confident in their art style, and the writer trusting the artist too to carry the scene out, because most of it takes place mentally. So you have these two opposing warriors here. You have the priest and you have Ito just coming at each other, and you know that he's got a sword. He's been hired to kill this guy. So what ends up happening is we have a flashback, and then we have the scene up here playing out. The flashback tells him why he has to kill him. And then we actually have the battle taking place in the mind of both of these characters. The battle actually taking place not externally at first. You always hear the story of these two samurai warriors who were complete badasses that, of course, were walking on the opposite side of the bridge, and both of them had a fight. And it was one of the biggest fights in history, and they had the fight mentally. None of it taking place outside. And that's what it reminded me of. But again, it has to have that trust between the writer and artist to come across and do this. And it is done just so perfect and flawless. I love this. Absolutely love this. And I wanted to come back to this to show you the kind of master that Goseki Kojima was. The kind of storyteller he was, that you don't need words, you don't need an explanation, you don't need to be a fan of manga to follow the sequential art, because he does it for you. He does the heavy lifting for you. Your eyes know where to follow. They know where the story's going to go. And it's just a piece of perfection when it comes to this medium. I can think of just a few artists that can pull that off. And to me, it's just showcases how amazing of an artist he was. And both of them, gone. Yeah, I forgot both of them had passed away now. What I want to do now is actually compare it to the small tankobon. But before I do want to note that this does come with a bookmark ribbon, and it is sewn binding, 720 pages, and printed in this thick matte paper stock. So let's go back to the beginning to do a comparison. The obvious difference, of course, is the size. The other difference is that this is glued binding and this is sewn binding. It is a different paper stock. This is a little tankobon. I don't have the Omnis again. Not sure what kind of paper stock they use, but they use this thinner, almost newsprint type of paper stock. Immediately you see that the translation is different, and immediately you see that this is mirrored, that they flip the page. So it can be done from left to right format. It's not until you get to this book right here that this is, for the first time ever, Lone Wolf and Cub has been translated in the traditional right to left format. So even the bird is facing a different way. You know, panels like this don't really matter because they're just a panel right in the middle, but it's panels like this. So of course in here, you know, you follow the story 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? There's that 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. But over here in the traditional right to left, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's how you follow the panels. it's a little easier to see, and that helps my old eyes. But we do have the translation done within the actual panels. The art has been cleaned up, whereas over here it looks muddled and darker. You can hardly see his facial expression. Over here is a lot lighter. And of course, these are the pages that I'm not sure if they were originally in color because they weren't available in color in the US. But let's get to some of these original black and white. There we go, the black and white, which I want to get to here. So, yeah, you can tell Daigoro right there. His face a lot clearer. It's cleaner. You can see him a lot better there. And over here, this is actually the black and white. As far as the translation, they still use the same kind of translation that they use for these. I think Dark Horse has always done a great job with that type of translation. Nothing really new at it. It's basically what they did was just making the traditional Japanese sound effects. Whereas over here, they translated within the panel. Man, so brutal, yet so beautiful. And just kind of give you an idea. And for that double page spread, of course, it helps that this is sewn binding, so you don't really have any art loss there within that gutter. Whereas over here, you lose a lot of the art because it's glued binding. But I wanted to go through at least the first chapter, because it is a really quick chapter introducing these two characters. So this is the way it was done in Japan, and it is finally done in that format over here in America. And then the chapter breaks. A father knows his child's heart as only... And I will say, yes, he even uses the child sometimes. Poor Daigoro. Alright, let's get to here. Yeah. Oh yeah, I just wanted to do a comparison of the first few stories. But that's what this is. That's what this masterpiece is. And again, I know that term gets thrown around a lot, but how else can you describe this series? Until the next book, and there should be a total of 12 of these, I think, once it's all said and done. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this deluxe edition, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
BD Cosmos, the Canadian leader in graphic novels. They have a physical storefront in Montreal, Quebec, and their website, bdcosmos.com, offers 25% off your order of over $99 or more, and free shipping everywhere in Canada for every order of $250 or more.
Their shipping care is exceptional. Your books will stay cozy through the rough Canadian weather and arrive to you in near mint condition.
After checkout, let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way, and you'll be added to the monthly $25 gift card raffle. Entries are valid for new and returning customers.
Don't be afraid to call or email them. Ask them questions. Their staff is always happy to help guide you towards the right purchase. Visit their website, bdcosmos.com, for more. BD Cosmos, with rewards and raffles taking care of customers in Canada. Eh?
And that was the content, the page count, and build of this deluxe edition, and of course the comparison to the smaller tankobon. I don't have the omnibus, so I couldn't compare it to that, but from what I've heard, that was also done in the Western style left to right format, and it's just a little bit bigger than the tankobon. But yes, this is finally back out in print in a big, beautiful format, the way it was meant to be read, and hopefully with this release, there's going to be a whole new audience that has never had the honor of reading this and will fall in love with it. But in the comments down below, let me know if you're picking this up, if you have the tankobon, if you've never read it and you've been waiting for an edition like this because you've just heard how wonderful this series was, and I meant every word of it. It is sometimes difficult to do these overviews and be middle of the road without hyping things up too much, but when it comes to certain cases like this, it is impossible to not get excited about this release. That's it, everybody. Let me know in the comments down below what other Dark Horse manga you would love to see in a deluxe edition. I've actually done a video on the channel of my most wanted deluxe editions, manga style. But that's it. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.